So we have this clip from ABC of Abrego Garcia's wife. And I'm not gonna bury the lead. I'm gonna say it right off the bat. I believe this woman is under duress in everything she's doing. I believe my views on this is completely reasonable. Let me play this clip for you, and then I will lay out my argument.
I have to ask it. You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband?
Husband is alive. That's all I can say.
What?
Okay, and you know I'm not going to push on that apparently. But how much hope?
That was a ridiculous non-answer. I believe that his wife's under duress. Let me lay this out. In 2021, she files a petition for protection on domestic violence accusations. She says that he's punched her, mercilessly beaten her, given her a black eye. All of a sudden, she stops following through with it. What could possibly be the reason for a woman to claim that this guy, who has been accused of human trafficking, who has MS-13 gang tattoos, who is believed by 2 courts to be an MS-13 gang member, why would she abruptly just decide, you know what, these multiple beatings he's given me, I've worked it out? Well, you're a cop.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
This is my expertise.
If you went to, if you got a report from someone saying, I just watched a guy beating his wife, and you went to the house, knocked on the door, and the woman said, no, everything's fine, what would you do?
That's a good what if. Does she have like visible bruising?
She got a black eye.
Arrest the dude. I got to get a statement from the guy that saw it happen.
But she said it's fine.
Doesn't matter.
She said nothing happened.
New York State domestic violence laws say that I have to separate the 2 parties, and if I get the witness, I got to take them apart.
Now, there's a reason why that law exists. In your experience, was she fine?
No.
This is the point I'm bringing up about Abrego Garcia's wife. So she files for an order of protection saying he's punched her, he's beat her with a work boot, gave her a black eye. The most reasonable conclusion as to why she withdrew is because an MS-13 gang member and his gang member buddies are saying, don't mess with us. You know what MS-13 can do.
No.
You don't think so?
No. The amount of times that I've had domestics where partners, kids, we'll just stick with partners, right? Husband and wife that get into domestics with active orders of protection that I'll go in and I'll investigate. And they say, hey, he assaulted me. I'm like, okay, cool. I need you to come in for a statement. Well, a week later, she keeps ignoring my phone calls. I got to close the case because all she wanted was to have the guy removed for the day. She's going to bring him right back into the house the next day and violate the order of protection that's in between them because they've got a long-standing relationship. And that's par for the course for a lot of domestic violence issues.
And the court filing here said they dismissed it because she did not appear in court to follow up.
And so she said that we worked it out. And I agree with you in a normal case, but not when MS-13 is involved. She's right now doing all of these things which are in a contradiction to what she had claimed before, and she's raising lots of money. So one could argue she either lied then or she's lying now, saying everything was fine, because she's getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. From what we've seen in the media of what MS-13 does to people who go against it, notably some 15 years ago, some hackers in Mexico, not really hackers, but internet activists, threatened to leak information that would compromise MS-13. They were both found strung up and hung from a highway sign. People were driving past their corpses. I would actually argue it is much simpler to assume an MS-13 gang member who's about to get an order of protection that's going to bring unwanted attention to what they're doing, likely just told her, stop or else. Maybe that's why she didn't file until 9 days later.
It could be. And listen, it's hard for me to imagine any interaction with MS-13 that wouldn't be inherently coercive, right? They're a hyper-violent gang. If they lived in your neighborhood, it would be coercive.
Indeed. So we could ask ourselves, is this a normal circumstance in which I would argue, right, exactly as you've seen. I mean, more than enough YouTubers have covered stories of women making false accusations for us to be like, there are instances where women claim they were abused. Who was that woman who hit herself? She got in trouble for this. She didn't.
Tawana Brawley?
Was that who that was? I don't know. Someone.
Al Sharpton.
She punched herself in the face and then claimed he did it.
No, she faked an assault.
Yeah.
That was. But there's plenty of cases of women who will injure themselves and then report it as spousal
There was a
abuse.
super viral video this week of the landlord that went into a woman's home, called 911, and then said she was being beaten, started throwing herself on the floor and into a wall.
Wow.
And the woman had a camera in the house, and she got on film.
So I would just say this:
She's beating me. She's punching me.
with MS-13 involved, and look, I know that MS-13's got a reputation for being super brutal.
Yeah.
I can tell you from the gangs in Chicago, we had a dude who was the dude who came on the show, Serge, who got shot at and his camera guy got shot? Brandon Buckingham. Sorry, I'm forgetting your name, brother. When you give media coverage to a Chicago gang, the other gangs are like, you're dead. Because you're giving them cred, you're giving them respect, like you are propping them up, you become a target.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet MS-13 was like, don't mess with us.
I disagree, just because the gang is so violent. An order of protection or a domestic violence issue, or maybe he gets locked up, or where she decides, well, hey, I'm part of the lifestyle anyway, and this happens, whatever acceptance that she wants to say. An order of protection and an assault or harassment charge is nothing compared to these guys.
What if it puts the guy on the radar of the police?
I mean, they're already on the radar for the police. They're an MS-13
So this is
guy.
before. Well, actually, this was after he got arrested, actually. So, yeah, I agree with you.
You're saying this now, though, right? You're saying that she's acting this way because they're threatening her now. You're not saying it was
Both.
then? Okay. Because,
Both.
I could see it.
Like, here's a guy who already almost got deported.
Yeah.
They're saying he was a Chiquea, which means, according to the DA, this guy appeared on Fox News, Abrego Garcia would have had to have murdered somebody. That was the next step for full initiation. He was basically like, they call him, a Chiqueo means he works with the gang, he'll do what they want, but he doesn't get full benefits. He's not a full member until he kills somebody. And so he gets arrested in 2019 and he's nearly deported. But he argues, if I go back, I'll die, so he gets a temporary stay. So I looked up the law. It says a USCIS interview that finds the circumstances of his home country have changed, voids his withholding of deportation, and then he can be removed. I'd imagine any police scrutiny, especially beating your wife, is going to put his standing in this country at risk and negatively impact a gang.
His deportation was not paused. He had a final order of deportation.
Right.
The order of withholding just says you have to go. You can't stay in the U.S. anymore. You're not lawfully present, but we will not order you deported to El Salvador. That's all it meant.
Unless the law states that unless the circumstances of your home country have changed, thus that there's no longer a threat.
That's true. That takes a hearing.
Exactly.
Right. But he lost his withholding on a different basis entirely. In February this year, when MS-13 was designated a terrorist organization, he became a terrorist, and they're ineligible by function of law.
So that's
I agree.
grandfathered
Now let's go back to 2021, when she claims he was beating her and then stopped abruptly. Perhaps you're right, and I'm crazy, right? Or I'm exaggerating, or I'm viewing it wrongly. She just was falsely accusing the guy because there was something she was trying to get out of it.
No, or then this is what I'm trying to say. She's not faking it. She was beat, but this is just a part of the domestic violence circle that happens in relationships.
That she's
she
over
gets
it.
beat, she gets over it. They stay together. He brings in food. She loves him. They love each other. She gets beat. He brings in food. She gets fatter.
Battered wife
and then,
syndrome.
Yeah. What's that?
Battered wife syndrome.
Yeah, battered
Where
wife. So where else is she going to go? And what I'm trying to understand is your point of like the money coming in.
That's now.
That's now.
$200,000.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. First of all, she's got an incentive to say whatever she's got to say about a guy she claimed was beating her. But the gang is also going to be like, we want that money.
You think the gang is taking the money that she's bringing in?
Hey, look, man, I don't know if I have a more serious view of gangs than you or the people who watch, but I guess from the gangs that I know and how they operate,
Yeah,
like,
I'm
a
with,
regular street gang in Chicago would be doing exactly as I'm describing it right now.
I'm
I know
with,
Zoom
I'm with
nothing.
Tim on
If
this.
let
If
me
she had found $200,000 in a grocery bag on the street and brought it home and the gang found out about it, they would take the money. They're not going to let her keep that money.
The reason I think this is the gangs that I knew in Chicago, if a woman was panicking over her boyfriend who was in the gang was beating her, the gang would walk up to her with a gun and say, you say one word of this and you're dead.
Yeah.
Why would MS-13 not do that to her when she filed for a domestic?
I'm not saying
like-
that they have to. I feel like you're coming from the point of view where because she dropped these charges and because she's gang affiliated, that it has to be
No, it has to.
some
I'm
sort
saying
of gang.
Yeah.
the view I have is what is the simpler solution? What makes the least amount of assumptions? In a normal circumstance, I completely agree. The cycle of domestic violence.
But why
Can we
wouldn't
just go with something that's a lot simpler, though, and just say that they're asking her about things that like might make it so there's less sympathy and the money is coming? Like, we could just say the money's coming in. Like,
No, right. I
we need
agree.
a negative connotation.
But 2021 is before money, before this case, before the terrorism designation? Why did she drop the domestic charge?
That's so normal though.
It's so par for
many
the
women
course.
just drop it either because they can't provide for their kids and they know they need that like the man back, whether it's miserable or not. So like as somebody who grew up in a foster household, domestic violence is something that is common in many of my foster siblings.
We'll argue
this.
this.
Is a thing.
So my view and what I'm describing is I think it's slightly more probable that the gang did what gangs do and says, shut your mouth or else. Do you think that's a possibility? Just not less likely? It's just substantially
I think
less
it's
likely?
extremely less likely.
I'm going to say that I think it's even more likely that the handlers that are arguing for a specific culture point right now would be saying, shut your mouth.
Yes.
I'm just going to say it. Like, if I'm going to say, I think the political handlers would be more likely.
I think she's extremely
moment.
safe because the people that want to push a political
They're
agenda
this
are
political
using
agenda
her
is
as a
selling
puppet, as
right
a
now for them.
mouthpiece, not so much
Yes.
MS-13. I think
don't
she's
know.
the safest she could possibly be because she's surrounded by people that want to see
That's a
her
good,
and her
that's a good-
family
it's
succeed.
a good point.
For me, I think it's political operatives that are done.
The lawyers on record for Abrego Garcia are like from a top 10 law firm.
Yeah.
Right? These guys make $1 million a year.
That was true with
This is
Mahmoud
pro
Khalil
bono
at
work.
Columbia
Yeah.
as well. It's
Yeah.
like he has like
Goodness of their
20
hearts.
So
amazing
MS-13
lawyers.
sitting back, be like,
All these top 20 law firms, they're $1 billion operations. They all have huge pro bono units just to do progressive legal work.
Well, and
do
that's
you
why
guys
Trump
think
brought
then?
in,
Do you guys think that MS-13's backing away from her? Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
she's gonna
They
set
don't
him
want
up.
any. They don't want to be close to this, and I don't think they want more attention like this.
She's on the news getting sympathy from half the country right now. Why
Yeah.
would they go mess with her? That's going to put
Yeah.
a spotlight on them.
Yeah, I don't think. Like for me,
don't
I
ever
think the
accuse- How
much
political
is-
manipulation is more likely.
How much is $200,000 worth from a gang that's doing human
Perhaps,
trafficking?
but we also, like, we've seen people kill for less.
Sure.
Yeah, but the government is gangsters too.
Yeah.
I mean, the progressives are gangsters too,
you get
right?
that from a rap
We just
song?
saw a video of
Fantastic.
a guy threatening to kill everybody, right? Did we play
Oh,
it during
yeah.
the show? or-
So some Carmelo Anthony fan. Is that what it was?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I feel bad for the NBA star, Carmelo Anthony.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's a rough.
like-
Yeah, that's what I kept thinking.
This guy's a legend.
It's a rough decision report
He's
for
with a
him this
C.
week.
The other guy's with a K.
It is. And I remember when someone said, like, hey, did you hear about the story about that dude, Carmelo Anthony, who killed that kid? And I was like, what? NBA superstar Carmelo Anthony did what? And then I looked it up and I was like, that's weird. I was like, well, it has kind of sucked because I wonder when you say the name, who first comes to mind? It's like taking his legacy from him. But yeah, I don't know. I think you guys make good points. I just think when I see this, you know, the experiences that I've had in Chicago with women who are dating gang members is that if a woman ever got beat by her boyfriend in a gang, she'd never even get to the filing process. The gang would be there knocking on her door and they'd have guns and they'd be like, look, just don't say anything. Otherwise, it's going to get bad for everybody, if you know what I mean.
I'm sure that's true, but that lacks the political dynamic that we have going on here.
Yeah,
And the
like
spotlight.
I'm saying in 2021 before the spotlight. Not now.
Oh, I see,
agree
I
with what you're
see.
saying
Right,
now.
right,
like,
right.
So what is your issue with 2021? Because I still think
in
I'm not
2021,
grasping what you're saying.
So in 2019, he's arrested.
Yeah.
He is found by a court to be deportable, to be deported, and a member of MS-13.
Yeah.
The gang's probably not happy about that. However, they give him withholding of deportation because he claims he will die if he goes home. So he gets a temporary holding on the deportation. In 2021, she says to the government, he's beating me.
Yes.
This is going to get him deported. It's going to get him in trouble, and potentially the other guys who are with him, who knows? It's going to put a negative light on him.
Yeah.
The gang experience that I have is any scrutiny from law enforcement on what they do could blow the whole thing open. And the last thing they want when they're dealing drugs is a woman claiming she's being beaten, which generates substantially more sympathy than someone slinging pot to another drug dealer or to some scummy kid.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is she drops this in 2021 because MS-13 says, we've already got these people breathing down our neck, trying to deport Abrego. He works for us, and you're going to screw us over. Let's say Abrego was accused of human trafficking. He was in a car loaded with people in 2022. This means if that accusation is true, he was still working and doing trafficking work for MS-13 a year later. If she goes to the police and says he's beating me, they lose their human trafficker. So I think it stands to reason. They went to her and said, shut the up. And she said, okay.
It's
Could be.
plausible.
Could be.
It's plausible.
Because then he continued to work for them.
Yeah.
But again, keep in mind, I just want to clarify because we keep saying that this guy's deportation was paused. It was not paused.
No, the order is called the withholding of deportation.
All the withholding means is that we will not deport him to El Salvador.
that one country.
He was still required to leave the United States.
Yes.
So the order saying you cannot stay here, that was not paused. He was not legally present.
Exactly. And I suppose the issue is we can't deport someone to a different country without treaties and foreign policy arrangements like we have with El Salvador now.
Normally, we let people self-deport. So normally, we don't just lock them in handcuffs and throw them out of the country. We let them gather their affairs. You know, they have homes, they have furniture, they have kids, and we let them get their affairs together. They know they're legally required to leave, and they know it's going to go much harder for them if they get caught again. But this guy did it for 6 years after his final order of deportation. He was still here.
Yeah. The point I was making the other day, which the left is lying about, is judges cannot create de facto permanent residency through a technicality. That means this is a temporary status, which is subject to being revoked at any time. And the only mistake Trump made, if there was an error, was that he needed to have a USCIS interview with Abrego Garcia before deportation, which literally could have been, so your fear, as stated in court, was MS-13 will kill you in El Salvador? Yes. Good news. Nayib Bukele has jailed all MS-13, and they're no longer a strong presence. The crime rate has dropped substantially. Withholding of deportation void on the plane.
So there's a concept in law called harmless error. So it's very common for someone to get convicted in a criminal trial. They appeal their conviction. They say, the judge in my trial did something wrong. And the appellate court looks at it and says, you know what? You're right. That was a mistake. The trial judge made a mistake. But you would have been convicted anyway. The error is harmless. Nothing changes. You don't get a new trial. You get no benefit from the appeal. This is harmless error. If we brought back Abrego Garcia today to the U.S., what would immediately happen to him? He'd be deported to El Salvador. So even if there was an error, even if we denied him a hearing we were supposed to give him, it's harmless error because the outcome's exactly the same.
I do absolutely love that. That, like, they're demanding he be returned, and he would literally walk in, go before a judge, have his withholding removed, and sent right back.
Exactly.
It makes no sense. It's the stupidest thing in the world. Look.
Can we just have that happen so they shut up?
Seems like a lot of facilitation.
Yeah, Trump doesn't want to do that because then Trump's bending the knee to these federal courts that do not have, in fact, the authority to make him do
In
that.
addition, they could then say he could do it for like more down the road.
You guys,
a precedent. I assume that that's part of the reason because you're right. Bringing him back and dealing with it that way would probably be more effective.
If you want to
Bring him back as a guest of the president of the United States.
Yeah.
So if you want to be Machiavellian, my advice to the Trump administration, if you want to be evil, right? There's always a couple, I always, whenever I tell people, when they say something like, what should we do about this circumstance? I always ask them, how evil do you want to be? Because if you want to be evil, there's really easy solutions to a lot of things, but being evil sucks, so don't do it. All that needs to happen is Nayib Bukele tell Abrego Garcia, we're going to take care of your family, we're going to pay you cash, and you are going to admit to being a member of MS-13, apologize, and refuse to return to the United States. Imagine what would happen if he did that.
And that would be fine with me because it's not something Trump is doing. I can explain.
But just imagine, like, if the Democrats came out and right now Abrego Garcia is on TV saying, I am an MS-13 game member.
They would do what they're already transitioning to now, which is saying, well, it's not really about him, everybody. The wife beater's not important anymore. It's about the principle.
They flip it over and say that he gave a gang member money.
But the reason Trump must not...
I'm saying if you're evil, you don't admit to doing that.
All you have to say is, well, where did that $50,000 in your bank account come from, Pedro?
No, but like, if the government of El Salvador wanted to be evil, there's not going to be a trace that can be detected.
Oh, that's
in a
true.
Meaningful way.
Yeah.
And the guy, I mean, okay, they can be really evil. They can push a gun into his back and say you're sorry, you're a gang member. You know what I mean? And then he does. And then what do? What do Democrats say if? Let's just say this: if Abrego Garcia went on TV, when I saw that picture of him meeting with Van Hollen, I was like, what if he just tells the guy right now, no, I actually am in the gang. I don't want to come. I don't want to go back to the States. What does Van Hollen do?
They didn't let him talk to Van Hollen.
What was it?
I thought they didn't let him talk to
Oh,
Van
yeah, they
Hollen.
did.
They did.
There's photos.
They had brunch.
They had margaritas
Mimosas. They were chilling.
Yeah, there's photos of them enjoying a margarita together.
Nayib
and now
Bukele posted it.
the Democrats are arguing that they gave the margaritas as a prop. Like, they're arguing that they didn't want the margaritas, but El Salvador put it there intentionally to make
New York
it look
Times reporter.
More friendly.
Yeah, was it?
It was like a New York Times reporter said, I saw them bring the margaritas and they didn't even want them.
They should have put a box of condoms on the table.
Whatever it is, my comment
I
section is saying they didn't have real margaritas.
I do love the meme that's find someone who looks at you the way a Democrat looks at an MS-13 gang member.
Oh my gosh.
Man,
I have like a really like a very unique perspective. Everybody has unique perspectives on everything, and like I'm deeply purple. Everybody pretty much knows that at this point. When it comes to legal versus illegal immigration, my first husband, his family they live near Fort Huachuca in Benson, Arizona. And every one of them served in the military to earn their citizenship. All of the males in the family line going back 4 generations have served in the military, different branches, mostly the Navy. And almost all of the men and several of the women in the family now choose to work for Border Patrol. And I was kind of surprised by that when I had my daughter and I was spending time with them down near Fort Huachuca. I'm like, why? You guys, why do you do this? And they basically said,
Because they need
come
somebody
up-
on the inside.
They said you don't understand the things that the children that the coyotes do to the children. They're smuggling in. Find your first pregnant woman's body in the desert with something literally eating her insides, and you'll understand that the legal, you need to come in this way. They really deeply like taught me their perspectives, and I realized it wasn't that's where a huge amount of my influence on legal versus illegal immigration, especially across our southern border, has come from, because I was very liberal back then. And they were like, you don't understand what they're doing to these children. And me having grown up in a foster household, I was surrounded by children that were mercilessly abused by people. And to hear that was happening through trafficking and through the coyotes and what was happening to these kids along the way really kind of traumatized me.
And that's why Tom Homan is so energized about this. He's energized about this not out of hate for immigrants, but out of love for the children and the women who are being just horrifically destroyed in this process.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.